Hi everyone. I'm Regina with the Vancouver Asian Film Festival, and I'm the director of the VEF Industry Panels Relations. And so I'm here today at this moment with one of our Canadian feature directors, Yong Chen. And let him introduce himself a little bit and tell audience where's it and also a story about his name. And welcome, Yong Chen.
Thank you, Regina, and thank you to Vancouver Asian Film Festival for having Wuhan at your festival. It's a great honor. Yeah, I am. Yes, My name is Yong Chang, or in Mandarin, it's Zhang Chaoyong, and as you know, the pronunciations are different from the anglicized version to the Chinese version. But yeah. Um, Qiao Yong means brave overseas. So it's Hua Qiao de Qiao, Yonggan de Yong. So brave overseas.
Great. So let's that just tell us. Most of the audience either they probably watched this movie already from our VAF on demand, or maybe they haven't watched it. Just give us a little, a quick summary about this movie.
Yeah, the film is a cross section of different people who are living in Wuhan, and the whole idea behind the film was to kind of go beyond salacious kind of headlines about an unknown in the West, mostly unknown kind of city, and sort of uh, kind of giving a sense of the humanity behind a faceless city like Wuhan is depicted in the media. And so, similarly to my first feature documentary, Up the Yangtze, it really was about zooming in and giving a kind of a macro look into a place, and really trying to see and understand a place with empathy. And so the film looks at a cross section of different lives being affected by the COVID-19 outbreak at the epicenter in Wuhan, the city of Wuhan, in the months of February and March 2020.
Wow, that you just right at the time at that
Mhm.
moment. Okay, so we realized that is Donnie Yen is one of the executive producer,
Mhm.
and how did that come across, and how did he get on board of that?
Well, Donnie is a friend of the production company. The company is called
Oh,
Starlight Media. They're based in Los Angeles. It's a American company uh, with Chinese producers or Chinese American producers who run the show there. They're the talents behind Crazy Rich Asians and James Wan's recent film *Malignant*. And so they kind of have a hand in the Hollywood business and fiction filmmaking. So obviously they have good connections. I mean, not only is Donnie an executive producer, but my producers are quite well known as well. I have Donna Gilotti, who is an American producer. She won an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love, and also was nominated for Hidden Figures recently. And Diane Kwan, a Chinese American producer, was nominated for an Academy Award for her documentary that she produced called Minding the Gap. And so I was in good company. And so Donnie was part of the package. He was on board as the executive producer from the beginning, and I think he really just lent kind of a moral support in the making of the film.
mm, okay. Yeah, so carry on with this. Spin it to different questions because of you filmed this in China, right? With is that kind of go through the is it sensitive during the time that you're filming,
Well, luckily,
especially
yeah, I'll give
documentary?
you a little backstory. I mean,
Yeah.
so I sort of inherited 300 hours of footage. I was not on location in Wuhan at the time. In fact, it was my crew, and in fact, they were filming independently. Um, they were there originally. This was a crew of 40 people there, originally filming a story, about to begin the story in January of 2020, a film about the Yangtze River. And obviously the lockdown happened, and so they had to pivot. And what they did was they sent out crews of six crews of five to cover different stories around the pandemic. So you have the doctors, a volunteer driver, all a total of 9 different stories, and they really dug their heels down and followed in the technique that I'm quite fond of, known as observational filmmaking, or cinema verite, which is quite a embraced technique in mainland China, especially for independent filmmakers. And so that's how they did it. They really hammered down and focused on these 9 stories. And then I received this footage later in end of March, beginning of April, and the Starlight Media reached out to me, and I asked first to see some footage because I've never done anything like this before, working remotely or directing something that I wasn't on location for. So it was kind of different for me. And I watched the 10 hours of footage they gave to me, and it was remarkable, intimate, humanistic footage, and not unlike how I would approach filmmaking myself. And so I jumped in as a director, and I worked with a team of editors remotely in Los Angeles, communicating with my crew in China. At this time, they had wrapped the filming, and we just kind of did the back and forth over the summer of 2020 into the fall. And it was actually a pretty smooth process for me in terms of editing. It was, I guess, because as a director who wasn't on location, I wasn't too married to the footage, and I could make ruthless decisions much easier with the editor hat on, And so that's how we kind of got through 300 hours of footage. It's a lot of footage. And in the end, we cut it down to 5 different characters and focused on that.
Oh, so yourself is technically not at the locations.
No. I mean, obviously it was
Yeah,
lockdown, so I wouldn't have been able to go. And
okay.
I think, in looking at the footage, what really moved me at the time was at the end of March 2020. I live in Toronto, so I'm talking to you from Toronto. And I had one of those unfortunate anti-Asian experiences in my neighborhood with my daughter, and I was very kind of emotionally how to say it, uprooted and disturbed by that incident. And so with that in mind, when I received this footage, I realized that rather than be divisive and kind of stoke the fires of hate, that what I could see through the footage, what I wanted to tell, the story that I wanted to tell, was something more humanistic, and really to try to kind of give an emotional portrait of people's lives, and kind of connect us all in that way, because we can relate as individuals with the experience of the pandemic, even as between China and North America, we all have similar experiences, especially now, so I think, upon reflection. And so I carried that forward, and my crew, my team, my editors, everybody, the producers, mostly Chinese American or Chinese nationals based in America, we all kind of came together and really felt passionately about telling a story that was going to kind of go beyond what people were engaging with in the media at that point.
Yeah, for sure. That's a different angle based on what we've seen on all the regular media, right? So that means do you know anything about how did the crew member, when they filmed this at the location, do you know how they feel about it? Do you guys talk about it?
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think in communication with the crew afterwards, just to try to dig in and get a little more information about how they filmed.
Yeah.
It's it's something, you know, I have a lot of experience working in mainland China. I have a lot of experience shooting feature documentaries up the Yangtze, China Heavyweight, and I have a company with a partner in Beijing. So there's a sort of an understanding of how to work in China, and basically the method is that as an independent filmmaker, you usually have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So the 1 foot in is the one you have that gives you the press pass, that gives you the credentials to have access. That's very important that you have official kind of access and that kind of stamp. Um, and then the other foot is your independent filmmaker hat. And I have to say, there's quite integrity in the filmmakers I work with, who are out to capture the story. And I think the observational way of filmmaking is such that you're capturing things as they unfold without sort of um, uh, censoring yourself. And so it's constantly just letting the camera roll and capturing the story as you see it unfolding, building your relationship with your subjects, and trying to carve out the character arc or the story that you're following. And that's the kind of material that I encountered with this 300 hours from
Mhm.
the team in mainland China. And so uh, given my experience, I think it's a careful way of filmmaking to make sure that you capture what you want, and not get kind of censored or cut out of or face any kind of restrictions. And so and it is a stressful way of working. I understand that. And
Mhm.
but I think at the bottom of it, deep down, I believe that these filmmakers really followed the kind of mandate of the observational approach.
Yeah, it's definitely something we won't know that until we talk to you. That is a bunch of different productions to put that together, right?
Mhm.
In the sense of them, and so like, and the other thing is like during at that because it's you're not really at Wuhan, right? You're not really. Were
What do you
you
mean?
were you there during that
No,
time?
I was not there, but
You was not there.
I was
Yeah,
working remotely. So,
yeah,
I got all the footage, and
yeah,
then I was all the raw footage, and
yeah,
I had to put it together into
yeah.
a
Okay.
cohesive film.
Yeah. So let's say that is definitely is really interesting, right? So how do you just based on this footage, and what is your creative process to come across this to create this film is so cohesive after that? So I was just wondering, like, how did that? Yeah, maybe your little tips to some of the
Sure,
ideas.
sure, sure. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Um, well, I think the first step is to make sure you, I think this is for most of my films, and I think for a lot of filmmakers, we go through this stage. First stage is you have to kind of ingest all the footage, watch all the footage. Um, uh, Usually, as the director, I this is the stage where I kind of walk away from the process, and I hand it over to my editors or
Mhm,
editor to go through all the footage and select what they believe to be the good footage. In that way, there's one step of filtering the stuff that isn't useful, and sometimes it's the stuff that I feel that should be in the film. Uh, but at that moment, I'm too close to the images, so I
mhm,
tend to just. So that's usually what I do: allow the time for the editor to work through the footage and create what you call an assembly. And the assembly can be out like 10 hours long or whatever it is, out of 300 hours.
mhm.
But in this instance, for Wuhan, I was part of that process because I was fresh to the footage, and so in
Yeah.
that way, we could very quickly identify the stories that we liked the most. At least I had that ruthlessness to say, I don't need this. This isn't useful. Let's keep this and this. And so immediately, what struck me was the storyline of the young couple, the the young man, the volunteer driver, and his partner who are
Mhm,
about to give birth.
mhm,
And that footage is just so strong, and the filmmaking was so strong, especially with their story, that really wanted to anchor the movie into around that story of the birth of a child, and also
mhm,
thematically connect it to this idea of the cycle of life, life and death, and that even through a pandemic, babies are still born, and
Mhm.
et cetera, this kind of notion. And so so that was the through major character arc, and then around that we built in the other stories: the nurse, the doctor, the psychologist, the mother and son, and that, so those were the other kind of secondary characters we built the film around. Initially, we structured it in a very kind of fictional way, like a
Mhm.
4-day, 4-night kind of, 4 days in the and 4 nights, and or 5 days and 4 nights in the life of of these characters in Wuhan. But obviously, when we look back at it, it became apparent that that was very forced. It just didn't make sense. So by removing those timestamps, it immediately became, yeah, all we did was take away the timestamp and just said that the film took place in February of 2020, and then we still have a day for night structure, but it doesn't kind of it's not something that we put forward as a obvious device, but I think you feel it, the passing of time, and so that was how we structured the film. And you start with a very long version, and then you keep chipping away at it,
Yeah.
chip until you get it down to what you think works. And the other part of it is just sharing it. We had numerous screenings with trusted people who
Mhm.
give us honest feedback, and that's how I work. That's how I work in general, and it was quite a positive experience, especially that we were working remotely.
Mhm.
That is so awkward to be here in this office, and then my team in LA. There's many late nights trying to get
Yeah.
the film done, but I actually have not met any of my crew in person, except the people that I post production,
Mhm.
the mix and color and all that stuff that we did here in Toronto, that I could sit in on, but everything else was done remotely.
Yeah. I guess it's everyone believes something, and then they don't really need to get together, and then they make the story and tell the story to the world. Yeah, in a sense.
And and I have to thank Starlight Media, because they were very supportive.
Mm.
They understood that then they could provide the resources that we needed to get the film done, um, and that was important. The other thing was just the passion of
Yeah.
everybody, and certainly I think also at the time were the Atlanta shootings, uh,
Mhm.
and the anti-Asian killings, and we were just so emotional, and all the statistics coming out about the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes, and so we landed on this quotation that at one point was in the film, and at some point we removed it, but it opened the film at
Mm.
one point, and it was this quotation, a letter written by a Japanese official in the 7th century to a Chinese official, and it said, "We are from different lands and are separated by mountains and waters, yet above us we share the same sky and the same feelings." And that really was our theme for the film.
Mm. Wow. That's some little things that we don't know. Now we know. That's great. So now, always usual questions. Like after this, you finish this now. So what is the other next big projects that is in your radar?
I'm working on a couple projects that are a little more in my backyard, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm actually developing a fiction series. I optioned with my partner, Christina Piovizan, my co-producing partner. We optioned the Giller Award-winning book "How to Pronounce Knife" by Suvankam Tamavangsa. So I'm turning that into a fiction series.
Oh.
And the other one is there's a couple other things cooking.
Yeah.
So I hope
Oh.
to make another fiction film soon, hopefully back in mainland China, but once I can travel there. But right now I'm kind of stuck here.
Mhm.
Um, there's um, I think the idea is to just sort of stay here for a while before I can
Mhm.
travel again.
Yeah, yeah. We all, yeah. Well, we all understand that, right? It's just get stuck until 2022. You never know.
Mhm.
So,
That's right.
yeah. And is there any last thing you want to mention to the audience? And at this
Uh,
point,
just I'm grateful that you watched the film or are about to watch the film, and I hope that it leaves you kind of with some reflection. I think everyone reacts to the film differently over
Yeah.
depending on what period of time you're encountering the film. And I watched it early in the pandemic, and then later in the pandemic, and I wonder what your reaction will be. But I generally feel that people are quite there's something I'm hoping that it will connect with you on a on that emotional level, on the sense of kind of seeing your uh, our our little lives and how they may fit in the bigger scheme of things, and that I'm hoping this film gives you a little sense of optimism, a little bit of sense of hope.
Yeah, I think so. That's the story that how I feel that after I watch it. Is at the end of the day, lives go on. So right, yeah. So, okay, all right. Thank you so much for your
Thank you very
time.
much.
And then well, that's it for now. And thank you everyone tuning in with us with our Filmmakers Talk. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.